Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the mayor or the administration, I guess since we have the audit coming, and we want to know what the results are going to be of that. If you do reduce these officers now, and the audit suggests that maybe we should have them, can they be reinstated, or how are we going to work that?
Through you, Mr. President, the audit, and subject to ultimately to council's acceptance and efforts to act on those recommendations, if it calls for having more officers and fits within budget and other operational considerations, we will change it. There's as much likelihood that they will suggest even fewer officers as there are to suggest they would maintain or increase the number beyond what we have here. You know, the basic premise of these numbers changes is that the city of Elyria Fire Department has been operating on certain standards of its promotions of assistant chiefs, captains, lieutenants, based on a model that's been in place for 40 or 50 or more years, and it's largely based on number of stations and apparatus, and applying the number of stations, and in particular our apparatus, and the personnel that we have. These numbers are way over what our department has been operating for, I think, since 1979. So this is to coincide with existing applications of our officers, right-sizing these officer count to coincide with the makeup of our department. The audit could suggest an entirely different approach to how we manage the department and the structure of its officers, and that we would take on when that would come in. Right now, I believe the contract we've signed with the management firm is to give us findings in August sometime, and then how long it would take to act on it afterwards, that would be based again on the will of this body as well as the money to do so.
Yeah,
So we may, to finish up, I guess, when that study comes in, we may turn all of this upside down entirely.
And one other question for the administration, Mr. President, through you. Do you have a time frame on this, Mayor, that you're looking at to start this process?
Through you, Mr. President, we would act as quickly as we can through the processes touched on by the law director, and we'll follow the precise procedure through Civil Service Commission as well as Ohio Revised Code and our own ordinances.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Marks, did you have a comment? If you would, please, new information.
Dean Marks, President of Elyria Firefighters Local 474, address 330 East Broad. I'm not a lawyer. I have a lawyer sitting here that will speak to you in regards to that. What I need to stand here in front of you and talk to you about is safety. Because essentially, by making these cuts, you are closing a station in the city of Elyria. Those numbers that the mayor has given you do not apply to 4 stations. We've had 4 stations in the city since 1965. That's the numbers we need to run those 4 stations. His numbers would show you having 3 stations or less. So essentially, by a vote tonight, you're essentially closing that 4th station. Now we've heard our latest numbers now are $800,000 that are coming from the fire department cuts, essentially laying off 20 firemen. There is no longer the safety in this city that it needs to have with the fire department as respect for emergency medical situations and for fires. There's a potential of 11 guys, 10 guys on duty every day. That's unheard of. Somewhere in all these talks and litigations and everything else that's going on here, safety has to become a priority in this city. So what this all comes down to is cutting that 3rd station. Now I have articles that show back in 95, when this mayor was a councilman, he talked about closing that 4th station. This isn't something that's just come up because of the times. This is something he's wanted to do since 1990s. Okay? That's essentially what this is all about. Okay? Now my lawyer can stand up here and talk about the legalities of this. But I'm here about safety, and somehow, some way, safety has to become a priority here.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and is this new information or?
Well, I would say it's new because it's in part response to the comments made tonight by the law director, Pat Riley, 520 Broadway, Lorraine, Pine County. So Elyria Firefighters Union. I apologize for being a few minutes late. I didn't realize I was going to be here.
We started late, so your policy not
Well,
necessary.
the reason I say that is only because I did not hear all of the law director's comments,
Oh,
and so I'm not able to respond to them as well as I would like. I just heard perhaps the last few moments of it. I guess what I would say to council is that the civil service law and the collective bargaining act law in Ohio are very complicated bodies of law. I don't profess to know it all about them, I don't, but in this county, there are probably a handful of us, including your law director, who are charged with the responsibility of knowing them and applying them and giving our clients advice every day. So in that sense, I think I could say with some sincerity that I know more about it than most lawyers in town. What I want to emphasize again to council is that there is a very substantial distinction between layoffs and demotions. There's a very substantial distinction in the law between determining the adequacy of a workforce, which in my opinion is a layoff, how many firefighters you deem necessary to adequately protect the city, and changing the recognized bargaining unit as it has been recognized by CERB. Those are two distinct things. They're hard to articulate, perhaps hard for non-lawyers to understand, even hard for lawyers to understand. They are very dramatically different. In my opinion, what is being suggested to you tonight is hard to grasp because it is a use of words that perhaps shouldn't be interchanged. In my humble opinion, if you pass this ordinance, you will be violating the Collective Bargaining Act because you don't have the authority to change the structure of the fire department. What you have the authority to do is exercise your management rights. And in that context, as your law director was explaining from the contract, as I heard his final comments, the adequacy of the workforce, that is the number of firefighters, i.e. layoffs, that's within your purview. But to change by structure what has already been recognized by Ohio's governing agency, the State Employment Relations Board, as being the structure of this fire department, would, in my opinion, be unlawful. That can only be done by CERB order, and CERB order can only be, their jurisdiction and their order can only issue from a petition either by the employer, by the employee, or by those bodies jointly. In my opinion, as I said before, this action, this legislative action would be in violation of the Collective Bargaining Act because you're changing the structure. Now, if you wish to lay off, that's your prerogative. And layoffs kick in, as the law director was mentioning, certain bumping rights and so forth. But those are two distinct situations, two different situations. Layoffs are different than demotions. Demotions by law, by civil service law, as this city is governed, because it incorporates the state civil service law through its civil service rules and regs, can only happen for cause, malfeasance, misfeasance, gross inefficiency, drunkenness, and so forth. That is not what you can do if you pass this legislation. You would not be permitted by law to demote. That would be, in my opinion, absolutely wrongful. If you think you can, as I say, I'm not suggesting I know it all, but as I say, that would be wrong. If you wish to lay off, that's your choice. You'll decide that from a policy standpoint. But changing the composition and demoting, in my opinion, is unlawful and wrong. Laying off and bumping, that's another matter. And that's the distinction I want to reemphasize for your benefit as you deliberate this legislation and ask you to consider it, because we'll have to react if, in my opinion, you act wrongfully, and then if you act rightfully, we'll be left to our other rights. But changing the composition of the unit without a CERB order and demoting without cause, in my opinion, would be wrongful, and we'd have to react accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you.